like everybody else, but can't really complain. Obviously, there's a lot of people with bigger problems in the world than having to talk about football in their basements and do distance learning. So we're getting along like everybody else, and certainly thinking of everybody else who's dealing with the same thing across the entire globe.
So for the viewers who just joined, if you don't mind, can you explain your background a little bit, and when did you get interested in the sports business, and how did you get into NFL Network?
Really, I mean, this goes back, 18 years or so to the first internship I had at KFAN Radio in Minneapolis. That kind of set me on the course. Obviously, sports had always been something that was interesting to me, but I took an unusual path from KFAN Radio to the Eau Claire Leader-Telegram newspaper in Wisconsin, covering high schools and D3 college sports and things like that, to the Green Bay Press-Gazette, mostly covered the Packers there, and then eventually to 1500 ESPN back in Minneapolis, to USA Today, and now to NFL Network. So it's fair to say that I've kind of been across every form of media, between print and TV and radio and digital, and then they keep inventing more and more platforms. And see, here we are inventing another one here. First Instagram Live.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So how is it like working with the NFL Network crew, like Steve White and James Palmer, like I said earlier, and Omar Ruiz, Mike Silver, you name it. All like, how's it like working with all of them as a
Well, I think it's a really good reporter group that we have, and I think that the great part of it is everybody kind of has different roles. They have their own ways of going about it. You don't have 16 robots that all deliver the news exactly the same way. We just have one robot, Ian Rappaport. The rest of us are actual human beings. I think it's a really good crew, and everybody's, has kind of, I don't want to say specialties, but certainly we all know kind of where we fit in the big picture of NFL Network, which I think is great, because then, in terms of different stories and things like that, there's different opportunities for different people to shine through the course of time. Right now, we're in this unusual spot where everybody's at home. Everybody's doing what me and Rappaport and Mike Garafolo do on a regular basis, which is broadcasting from our basements. There's no travel right now, which is really unusual. I think that we're all trying to maximize that in terms of getting time at home and things like that. But absolutely, I mean, I think that it's a really good crew. Enjoy interacting with all of them. Hopefully I'll get to see them. Normally we'd all be getting together next month for our annual summit. I don't know if that's going to happen in person this year, but always fun seeing those guys.
Yeah, so I got you on a good time, because yesterday they released the schedules for all 32 teams, and I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, so what do you? We'll get to the Cowboys later, but what are your thoughts on the schedule that got released yesterday, and what game stands out to you, and then what kind of especially when the players playing their former teams, what kind of games stand out to you this year?
Well, I think that without getting into the individual matchups, which I think there are a ton of them, starting off with the kickoff game between the Chiefs and Texans, I think that the thing that struck me was the NFL has been very clear that they intend to play a full season, that they hope to start on time in September with fans in the stands, and then they will adjust accordingly. And so some of the things that they did just built into the schedule is reflective of what they did back in 2011 when they were coming out of a lockout. For instance, for the first time since 2011, there are multiple weeks where you don't have division games within the first 4 weeks of the season. In other words, week 3, week 4, there's no division games. If you had to crunch, you have that possibility. There's also a balance between the 2 home games, 2 away games in the early part of the schedule as well. That would also make that be able to be maneuvered. There's a lot of different things they did, which was smart. In other words, they are planning to have things on time, but they are also aware that you're dealing with a global health crisis that continues to change on a monthly, weekly, daily basis. They're going to continue to proceed with caution. Dr. Alan Sills has been very active on calls with the CDC and the federal government, as well as other sports leagues, because Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL are still, as far as I'm aware, hopeful that they're going to be able to restart their sports in the coming months here. And so there's absolutely going to be some lessons that are going to be learned based upon how that goes. For the NFL right now, the focus for them is just the next step is phase 1 of reopening the club facilities. They've got protocols that were sent out in an 8-page document to teams this past week about that. But none of that in phase one involves players. That's subject to collective bargaining. So expect there are going to be even more stringent protocols for players back in the building, and then another set of protocols for training camp, and then another set of protocols for games. This is going to be, an involving process. I'm excited like everybody else. I can't wait. I see, Vikings Saints on Christmas Day, as much as that's the trip that might end my marriage. I can get excited about a game like that on a big time stage. You get excited about those games. I think we're all optimistic. We all want to be back to work. And just like the rest of the country, you guys as fans, us as reporters, I'm normal this time of year going to rookie camps, going to OTAs. You get excited about the new teams and talking to people about it. Everything's a little bit different right now, but you still have that optimistic viewpoint that we're 4 months away. Exactly what it's going to look like, whether it starts on time, that's all going to be dictated by the situation at really a nationwide level in terms of the directives from state and local and the federal government. And the NFL is going to be in tune with that and continuing to evolve as the crisis evolves.
Yeah, so before we go any further, we have one of the persons that joined the live has a question for you already, and his name is Global Kid Media. This kid is 13 years old. He interviewed 1,000 people already, and he's trying to be the first kid sideline reporter in any sport. Do you see a first kid? Do you see that a kid being a sideline?
He done 1,000 interviews at 8. It's 13. I have a lot of questions about the numbers on that. Not to doubt it. I'm just saying that is a lot. I don't think I've interviewed 1,000 people in 3 years at NFL Network. Oh, maybe I have, but that's a lot. No, that's very impressive. I think that there's certainly opportunities. I think the big thing, when I get emails and, things through Instagram or Twitter or whatever, people asking for advice, my first reaction is always I'm just figuring everything out as I go always. And I'm 39 years old. So, it's tough for anybody to offer, advice. But I think that even though the industry has evolved substantially, I think that a lot of what it comes down to is being able to, well, first of all, just reading a lot, writing a lot, identifying the people within the industry that you think are good. Don't copy them, but figure out other things from what they do well that you can apply to your own development. And then you've got to find your voice. You got to find out what makes you unique. If you're a 13-year-old would-be sideline reporter who's already doing interviews, that in itself is a pretty unique viewpoint. And media is much bigger than ever. It is much more competitive than ever. And so you need something that makes you stand out. So once you figure out what those traits are that make you different, even if you don't know what they are initially, that's fine. You got to make mistakes. You got to try different things and experiment. Once you figure out kind of what sets you apart, then just spending time trying to work at it every day, get better, try to perfect it. And I've been doing this for, close to 20 years now. And I'm far from perfect. I'm trying to get better every day and talk to new people and try out different things, and I'll fall on my face sometimes. That's kind of the nature of the business. So, the good news, again, especially if you're trying to kind of chart a unique path, is there's so many more ways. I mean, this didn't exist. When I was in college, I took classes on like how to design a website with Macromedia. flash. I mean, things that are not in any way applicable, programs that don't even really exist now. But the base level of the delivery mechanism, that was just growing at that point. The explosion of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok and whatever the 10 things that a 13-year-old would know that I don't even know about. All those things are great because they give you an opportunity to get in front of people, even you doing this. I mean, this is something that you wouldn't have been able to do, but obviously, we appreciate you following. I always see you tweeting and tagging us, so I wanted to, come on. And it's great, though, because there's 100 different ways, probably more than that, to get exposure. That was there's a real barricade to that 15, 20 years ago in terms of you had to go work at a newspaper. You had to go through certain steps. I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I went and took agate on state track and freelance for the Associated Press and did weird interviews for Sports Illustrated and things like that, because they were all just totally unique experiences that better prepared me for different challenges that come about now.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up this question real quick, but so obviously, during this pandemic, there's nothing open right now, but do you guys have opportunities at NFL Network for people?
There's for job openings.
Yeah,
that is above my pay grade. I'm sure that on some website somewhere there might be listings, but in terms of me knowing about them, that is definitely beyond me.
Oh, okay. So we have another question for you here. This is good. We're getting the questions now. So question, what degree do you recommend for sports reporting or sports broadcasting? From _Lions Nation.
I mean, it certainly does not hurt to pursue. I have a degree in communications. I went to a liberal arts college, so we didn't have like a journalism specific major. I went there as a finance major for applying to other schools as a journalism major. Quickly realized that I had made the wrong choice, not for the school. It was a great place to go, but in terms of, the program. But I think that was a perfect example of, again, I took all these classes that were, editing SVHS tapes and things like that. They're not actual applicable skills, but it's all about not just the degree and what you have. It's just how you apply it. Getting your foot in the door at any college, whatever you're studying, there are opportunities at the newspaper, the yearbook, the campus radio station. I'm sure there's a lot of digital opportunities that were not there when I was going to college 20 years ago. So I think that's the big thing, is just kind of what do you make of it? I think that some of the most formative experiences I had were internships throughout the course of college too. It certainly helps. All those things, like what you're studying, and if you at least say you took classes on things, those can help you open the doors in terms of things like internships that are going to be far more important. And then, in the end, getting those opportunities is huge. Okay. Getting on people's radars is a big deal. But, in terms of like actually applying the degree, there are definitely lessons I learned in communications that I still apply today. But a lot of it is just kind of the real world experience, getting into those opportunities wherever they might lie at different companies or different TV networks, whatever they might be, and just seeing how other people operate. Again, trying to apply some of those lessons, not to be them, but to figure out, okay, that person does that really well. I kind of want to do similar things to what they do. How can I get better at that? How can I hone that particular skill? And a lot of it's just kind of, testing yourself too. It's a long way of saying, I think it is valuable to have a degree in communications or journalism. It is not essential. If there's something else you're passionate about, you want to do pre-med, you may have a lot of homework, but you still have opportunities to get on board and do different media things, even if you're doing them on your own outside of the structure. the typical campus environments, which again, there's far fewer barricades to being able to, to be able to get your face, your name out there and continue to experiment and find your voice.
Here's another question from Global Kid Media. He said, about why teams in one division can't have a bye each around same time, gets unbalanced when one division team has bye months before other divisions.
Well, that's certainly a fair point. For a team like the Lions, who seem to perpetually have the earliest bye possible, that's generally not advantageous. But there's a lot of different things that go into putting together the schedule. In terms of just making everything line up, the matchups are all pre-dictated. So then, especially in a year like this, where the first month of the schedule is built in part to have that flexibility if some things have to change in September. Like I said, it's absolutely a fair point. I don't like the schedule. I do know that it is a complicated process, and I know that teams would prefer, by and large, to have a bye either mid-season or toward the later point in the season. And then that also fits together with how many Thursday night games do you have in terms of short weeks versus long weeks. Sometimes a short week, if you've got two games that are manageable, having that kind of half a bye on the back end, that can make up for some of it too. There's a lot of different ways that can go. There's some unique things in this schedule. I mentioned that Vikings-Saints game. Well, how many teams even know what their schedule is on a 5-day work week? There normally aren't 5-day work weeks. This is something that's very unusual in terms of the NFL.
The interesting, before I get to my Cowboys, but I want to bring up this point. The interesting thing is the Patriots have 5 televised primetime games without Tom Brady and Gronk. Obviously, we don't make the schedule, but how can they put the Patriots on primetime TV since they lost their 2 big pieces and they don't know where they're going to be headed towards?
Well, there's still going to be a point of curiosity. If you're stacking up kind of the storylines within the NFL this season, I would say Tom Brady with the Bucs has to be at or near the top of the list. A team like the Bengals with Joe Burrow, you would think are going to be a natural storyline, at least until we see whether or not they're any good. Things can change quickly. You'd be 6 weeks into the season. People can become more or less relevant.
Yeah.
But the Patriots, what they are post-Tom Brady, I absolutely think that's going to be a national storyline. I don't think that anybody in their right mind, nor should they believe the Patriots are going to tank out and go 4-12, and they're going to be playing meaningless games in November and December. I don't see that. Are they going to win 14 games, 13 games like they normally do? We'll see. I don't put much past Bill Belichick. I still think, even without Tom Brady, and there's absolutely something to be said for the quarterbacks drive a lot of this, but the first time that Jared Stidham takes the field in a big-time game, if he's the quarterback, you're going to be curious about how he looks.
Interesting. So now to my Dallas Cowboys, I got. What do you think? What do you think of our schedule, and then our off season, and then our draft? Because I feel like we hit on everything on free agency and the draft, and I want to get your thoughts on the Andy Dalton signing too.
Well, we can start with the Andy Dalton signing. I think that a lot of people took that to be all about Dak Prescott not having signed his franchise tender. Certainly, it does not hurt whatever leverage the Cowboys might have to say we've got somebody who, if Dak doesn't show up, he will be able to run the offense. But I think much more realistic than that, more important than that, is the fact that the Cowboys looked at this and said there's not a lot of opportunities where an Andy Dalton, the guy with his level of experience, his intelligence, his ability to pick up an offense, to go out there and play, becomes available in May, and you can sign him for $3 million. That's just pure value. Mike McCarthy, the new coach of the Cowboys, of course, had issues when they had backup quarterbacks go into games. We all remember when Seneca Wallace took over, when Brett Hundley took over, when they had to play Deshaun Kaiser. There have been a lot of times where it's not worked out particularly well when they've had to go to that backup. So McCarthy looking at this and just saying realistically, having that veteran backup will also be good for the young quarterbacks they've got in the room, because they drafted Ben DiNucci out of James Madison in the 7th round. They've got the former Northwestern quarterback there as well. Another guy who
Cooper Rush. You talking about Cooper?
Not Cooper Rush.
No.
The guy from Northwestern. He was in the draft last year. Big burly guy. It'll come to me. I'll think of the name. But they have young quarterbacks, and they want to have a veteran. Right now, Dak is unsigned. The idea that he is going to, after playing for $2 million last year, that he would not play for close to $30 million this year does not seem to make a great deal of sense on paper. So the Cowboys are operating as if Dak is absolutely going to be there and be their quarterback. And they made some moves in the draft that you would think would help them out. I mean, I don't think there were a lot of scenarios the Cowboys were pondering where CeeDee Lamb is sitting there when they're on the clock. I thought for weeks going into the draft that K'Lavon Chaisson, the LSU edge rusher, was going to be the pick. If it was not going to be him, it was probably going to be a corner. It ends up being another wide receiver who now you couple with Michael Gallup and with Amari Cooper. And that Mike McCarthy likes to run, a lot of 11 personnel, spread things out. He wants to run a very multiple offense. You'll see him use a fullback too. They'll mix it up. But they think that Dak Prescott, and I spent a lot of time with McCarthy back in the fall. We watched some Dak Prescott tape together. This was months before he even knew he'd be the Cowboys head coach. And there were things he liked about the way that Dak could throw the deep cross, the way that he got in rhythm. There were things he really liked about him. So he's taken over an offense that, of course, also has a really good offensive line, even after a key retirement up front. And they have Ezekiel Elliott. There's a lot of toys for Mike McCarthy now to be playing with. What the Cowboys have to be hoping for is that Alden Smith is able to get reinstated, that potentially Randy Gregory is able to get reinstated, that they're going to have the edge presence they feel like they need. They've got to play better in the front seven this year. They also had a loss on the back end with Byron Jones moving on. They got a lot of things that they've got to put together on that side of the football, but they got a veteran coordinator in Mike Nolan to put that thing together. And I don't have much doubt in my mind, knowing Mike McCarthy's track record, that they're going to have a quarterback playing at a high level and they're going to score a lot of points.
I just want to give a shout out to Mike Hill, who just joined. I interviewed him yesterday from Fox. He does a great job at Fox Sports and other things. So shout out to Mike Hill, who just joined the chat. For the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to the season, and I think we're gonna have a much better year than last year because we have a brand new coaching staff, obviously, and our defense, I think, improved. So I feel like Jerry Jones should be drafting in the yacht for now on because I feel like he got lucky. So, what do you think? Actually, I love the pick of Travion Diggs. I really like that pick. I think he can be a star in the league. What do you think of that, Travion Diggs? Can he be a star?
I mean, we're sitting here in May. This is going to be, I'll say this, just generally speaking about rookies. I think you have to manage expectations, especially in year one. Not having the off-season program to be able to go onto the field, to go through rookie camp and go through OTAs, even though you have the classroom work that they're doing virtually, it's going to be tricky because the best corrections that a coach is going to make is when it happens on the field. You never know until you really work with guys on a daily basis how they're going to transfer over what they're doing in the classroom to what they're doing on the field. So all of a sudden you could have a really quickly ramped up process without a lot of preseason reps, without the actual preseason game reps and things like that. Those are going to be challenges. I think at no position more so than the quarterback position, but really everywhere on the team. These coaches that's one of the concerns I know is just no matter how much we teach them, we need to get a feel for how that guy reacts, his instincts and things like that, which you really don't know until you practice. So, can Travion Diggs become a star in the league? There's no reason to think that a guy that talented can't be, but what you see, even more so than normal rookies in 2020, I think you have to manage your expectations a little bit more and kind of contextualize that in terms of what that guy ultimately is going to develop into.
Yeah, so this is a two-parter question here. Where do you think Cam Newton will go, and where do you think Clowney will go?
And those are two great questions with Cam Newton. I know Ian Rappaport reported yesterday that he is open to being a backup in the right situation. The thing with that is, you also have to ask, how much is Cam Newton willing to play for? When Jameis Winston, to get to his ideal situation, in New Orleans, where he could learn from Sean Payton, learn from Drew Brees, maybe become the successor at quarterback, he had to take a one-year deal worth $1.1 million plus incentives. That was surprising, if not shocking, to people within the league, that the number would be that low. I mean, look at what other backup quarterbacks got in this offseason. Colt McCoy got like $2.5 million guaranteed from the Giants. There were a bunch of other teams that gave backup quarterbacks significant money, and that's not unusual. Jameis takes far less than that, and of course he's made a lot of money as a former number one overall pick in the draft, and so is Cam Newton. Is Cam willing to play for significantly less than you would think he would otherwise get in a normal market situation? You look at the teams that need one right now: Seattle, Pittsburgh, New England. All those teams are pretty tight on the salary cap. I'm not saying that it's going to end up being $1 million, but Cam may be playing for a lot less money than he thought he was going to make. Does he do that? Does he get into a situation where he feels like it's going to be best for his development as he goes forward? He's 31 years old, I think, right now. He's not a young quarterback at this point. He's got to figure out, where do I go that gives me the best chance now over the next 5 to 10 years to get back to playing at a high level, show I'm healthy, and all those things. Does he try to lock into that situation now, or does he wait? See if somebody gets hurt, if there's a Teddy Bridgewater type of a situation, a Tony Romo type of a situation, somebody gets hurt in the preseason or in camp, and then all of a sudden he pops right in there and becomes the starter. That's the unknown part of this, and Cam's got to make that decision on his own. In terms of Jadeveon Clowney, he's had interest. Yes, the fact that he's coming off core muscle surgery, and he's also had a microfracture knee procedure in the past. It is not helpful to him that during the COVID-19 restrictions, teams cannot bring him into their facilities and give him a physical. But that has not stopped him from having offers on the open market. I mean, he's had strong offers. The Seahawks have made multiple offers to him, multi-year offer, a one-year offer. The Browns have maintained interest. The Titans have maintained interest. It's not as if the market's been dead for Clowney. It's just nobody's quite certain when he's going to decide, okay, I'm actually going to go forward and sign. And the thing is, if he's banking on eventually the restrictions will be lifted, I'll be able to go to a facility, get a physical, and then I'll get the long-term contract at the money I've been wanting. That's a difficult proposition, because generally prices don't go up after free agency and after the draft when teams have spent their resources, both in terms of money and in draft choices elsewhere.
So before I let you go, I got some rapid fire questions for you and 2 takes. So, all right. Kawhi Leonard's laugh or Kevin Hart's laugh?
I don't know that I've heard Kawhi Leonard's laugh, man. I don't see a ton of NBA. I at least know who that is. So I'll go Kevin Hart's laugh.
Okay. Who's the funniest person on the NFL Network cast?
Ooh. I got to think on that one. I mean, Colleen Wolfe cracks me up. Just like the very dry delivery. I think that she's really funny. I'm trying to think. Palmer's kind of underrated funny. His humor comes across, I think, within his reports. Just kind of his natural ability to stay on his feet and stuff. So I'd definitely say those 2.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Colleen Wolfe on the show also. So hopefully she...
well, she's working. She's hosting shows. Oh, no, she's doing all kinds of stuff.
She's doing an amazing job. She's doing an amazing job. Favorite food?
For me... I had a really good curry last night from Lucky Street up here in Minneapolis, outside the Minneapolis area. It's I'm very eclectic in terms of taste. But like if I was one go-to thing, that might be it right now.
Curry.
Just like a good like red curry with some shrimp in it. I mean, you could feed me that every day, and I don't know how long I could sustain that from a health perspective, but yeah, I'd be happy.
So favorite thing to do outside of your work?
I'll be with the family and the kids, I think, is a big thing. Obviously, getting a lot of it right now. I got a 5 and a 3-year-old daughter, so it's just fun hanging out with them. And they got a lot of, as my 3-year-old often says, I got a big idea. That's what she always says when she's thinking of something she wants us to do. She's like, I got a big idea, and then she'll tell you, that's fun.
Oh man. Okay, who's do you think Zeke will win MVP in the next 2 years?
Well, it's tough for running backs winning the MVP. It's been a quarterback-driven award for so long. I mean, you got to run for 2,000 yards. Now, I think he'll get the opportunities to do that. Mike McCarthy, I think, oftentimes has been mislabeled as somebody who just wants to throw the ball all over the place. He wants to be multiple, as I said, and he wants to be balanced. He feels like your offense is at its best when you're balanced. One thing I remember Mike telling me one time was it's a lot more fun to call passing plays, but you have to call running plays. Like he knows that's the foundation of good offense. And when you have a guy like Zeke, I don't know why you wouldn't call his number a ton.
Favorite sports movie?
Man. So, I'm a pretty big sports movie guy. Field of Dreams would be up there if we're talking all time. Basketball from a slightly sports-oriented movie, I would put that up there. I've never thought Major League is as great as everyone says. It's certainly a good movie. I would not say that's my favorite. There's not enough good football movies. Any Given Sunday's fine to me. I never even saw the remake of The Longest Yard. I'm just trying to think. I'm literally going sport by sport in my head right now. Field of Dreams is definitely up there.
Here's my next question. So out of you, Ian Rappaport, James Palmer, and the rest of the NFL Network crew, who tweets the most?
Ian. It's got to be. I mean, Mike Silver does too, but like most of his
stuff is nonsense. Mike Garafolo too, right?
Garafolo, I think. Is closer to me. I'm probably, of me, Mike, and Ian, I would say I tweet the least, which has changed over time. I've just found that there's there are diminishing returns to the amount that you're tweeting, unless you're Silver, whose entire brand is telling people they're blocked and then blocking them. Giardi tweets a lot. We got a lot of serial tweeters. I used to tweet a lot more than I do now. I think I've just gotten to the point now. I'm thinking quality over quantity.
So the last two things here. This question means a lot because I've been asking all my guests that come on the show about the late Kobe Bryant, what they meant to them as a person and whoever, as a player, as a person, as a father and a husband. Because since you're a girl dad and you have daughters, what are your thoughts on Kobe? What did he mean to you? What did his daughter Gianna mean to you? What does Mamba mentality mean to you?
Well, I think that I wasn't really familiar with the girl dad quote that kind of flowed from until he passed away. And then I saw a lot of people begin to tweet that in photos, which made me think about it because I guess I had never really fully processed that, I have girls. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of they're my kids. But then you see the bond that fathers and daughters have, and I think that just kind of highlighted that for me. And the same thing with Mamba mentality. I've just seen other athletes and people talk about that. Just that kind of endless desire to win. I think that's certainly something that's going to be a legacy for Kobe. Just in terms of my watching him, that was just when Kobe was at his peak. we're not, that far different in age, was like when I was in college. That's when he was really on the come. It was right after, like, I was a big Michael Jordan guy growing up. I've been making my way through The Last Dance, the 91 through 98 Bulls. I mean, that was my childhood. That was, I had posters on the wall of Jordan. It kind of transitioned into Shaq a little bit. But then by the time I was in college, that was when Kobe kind of was taking over. And so I just remember watching so many of those great playoff series, the Lakers in the finals, or the Lakers against the Kings in the Western Conference playoffs and things like that. And, you just think back on that. When Kobe would drop 81 points on somebody, it just kind of seemed like he was doing that, okay, it's Kobe just doing that again. Then you have a chance to sit back and reflect on that and look at where he stands in terms of the all-time leading scorers. I just think, certainly a remarkable career that he had in the NBA. And absolutely, when you see the outpouring from every avenue of not just basketball and sports, but mentioning him at the Oscars and things like that, with the post-career things he had done in animation and the projects, you see the number of lives that he clearly impacted.
Yeah, so speaking of the documentary, what are your thoughts on that so far? I'm excited for 7 and 8 on Sunday. So,
wait, there's more?
Yeah.
I did not know. I told my wife we just got through episodes 3 and 4 last night. I told her it was over after 6. So now I'm not sure.
So
She's fine. Now you gotta go with it. She's been interested. She's like,
okay.
She was having a good laugh. I don't think she watched the NBA in the '80s. So like we were watching last night episode, I think it's 3, where just like the Pistons are beating the crap out of everybody, including Jordan, and she was like laughing at like how ridiculous this is. It was just like fist fights, I've enjoyed it again because I remember. I keep just having those flashbulb moments. I didn't know necessarily a lot of the backstory, especially in the early '80s, but just and always and hoping that all of us who are not on the front lines and are sitting here complaining that we don't have games to watch on TV, or we can't go to our favorite restaurant, or we can't go to the gym, all of which I've done, absolutely. But hopefully we're all taking the personal responsibility on ourselves to, even as states begin to reopen and restrictions are loosened, that we continue to have in mind, it's not just about us, it's about everyone else. If you wear a mask, it's not protecting you, it's protecting other people, and having that level of selflessness and conscientiousness about the greater good and society, and trying to continue to do things in terms of social distancing and everything else, just to help us not put other things ahead of what really matters, which is protecting the most vulnerable people. That's how societies are judged, both present day and historically, at least they have been, is how do you take care of your most vulnerable members? We have to continue to do that, whether that's frontline people, the elderly, the chronically ill. Those are the people that we have to be thinking about on a daily basis. And I'm absolutely trying to do that myself. My family's trying to do that. And I really hope that everybody else is doing the same thing.
Yeah, so I just want to give you a shout out because for letting me push this interview to 2 o'clock. Originally it was 12:30, but 2 o'clock, because today my family, my cousin, and my brother, we handed out sandwiches to the nurses, doctors at the hospital today. And we've been doing that for the last couple of weeks. And by the way, whoever's in this group, live or chat, please, the link is in my bio. We have a GoFundMe page going up right now, and we've been having it since, I think, 2 weeks now, and we raised over 2K. So if anybody can, vote, donate, and please, anything will help right now. And then we've been handing out supplies also to the soup kitchen, to cops, nurses, everywhere pretty much. But so we're going to continue this next week too. So, but I just want to give you a shout out, Tom. Just thank you for pushing this interview, and this was awesome. This was an honor. So I'm just rolling through these NFL Network crew interviews, and I'm loving this because I get to learn all of you guys' own personality on the show, and it's just amazing. And thank you guys for keeping us entertained on TV. And NFL Network to me is one of my favorite sports channels to watch right now, hands down, because the stuff you guys do is awesome. And then you and your family stay safe. And I'm going to be posting this interview on all social media formats. So.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate you always watching, always tweeting. I sometimes find out things that are going on NFL Network if I'm not on, because you tweet and tag me of what's on. I'm like, They're on today. So I appreciate it, and awesome what you're doing with the frontline workers. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I make sure I tag all of you. I mean, not all of you guys, but some of you guys. I mean, I don't want to blow up your timeline, so that's the thing.
No, but thanks,
yeah,
man. Really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me. Keep up the great work. Now go bug some of my colleagues.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep.
All right, man. Bye.